Good evening once again, and thanks so much for joining us for another edition, this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. Up first, here is our hazardous weather graphic. We've got no hazardous weather in the forecast here, so no advisories, no watches, and no warnings anywhere across Alaska. So pretty good evening and overnight period, and actually through tomorrow. No heavy weather or precipitation expected anywhere. Looking at fire danger, a couple of areas now showed up, just reached into the high fire danger threshold. That spot right there is Fairbanks, the Fairbanks area, or the greater Fairbanks area, and a little bit more expansive area up there around the Yukon River and the Porcupine, up in the upper Yukon Valley area there. Again, both of these just barely reaching that category. Otherwise, pretty good, pretty widespread lack of fire danger across the remainder of the state. And satellite imagery showing the next system sliding a lot of clouds. In fact, it's more of a cloud producer than a precipitation or wind producer, although winds gusting 25 to 35 at Cold Bay this afternoon. Otherwise, no rain reported there or at King Cove. St. George had a few sprinkles this afternoon. Otherwise, that's about it. A little fog around St. Paul, and not much of really precipitation for the Dutch Harbor area. So pretty weak system, not very impressive at all, and it's just gradually shifting east and northeast. But AKwx did pick up about 0.2 of an inch of rain with the front as it passed by, and that has ended now. Still some shower activity around Atka. And farther back to the west, fog seems to be the main weather feature out over the western Aleutians, with shimmy at 1/4 mile and dense fog this afternoon. Otherwise, over the interior, we've got clouds here in the south, mainly across southern Alaska here, although there are some breaks, but filling in as convection builds this afternoon. Actually, isolated thunderstorms already going on here roughly in the Kuskokwim Valley, northern Kuskokwim Valley, and also some strikes here over the eastern interior as temperatures warm into the lower 70s there, finally getting warm enough to trigger those lightning strikes. Got clouds, but no precipitation up over the north slope into the Brooks Range. Few isolated showers possible here, but looking really good this afternoon. Just mid and high level clouds along the Arctic coast, lots of VFR, and any fog had burned off this afternoon that formed this morning, such as around Kaktovik. Otherwise, the southeast coast had the wettest conditions today, with anywhere from 1/3 to 2/3 of an inch of rain falling over the southern panhandle. Ketchikan picking up 2/3 of an inch, or 2/3 of an inch of rain in the 12-hour period today, ending this afternoon. And Craig had about 1/2 an inch of rain, and amounts were quite lighter back to the north. Juneau only 3/100 of an inch. Dry day with clouds along the North Gulf Coast, south central Alaska, variably cloudy. Pretty much shower free, and then showers developing here northern Susitna Valley or up toward the Alaska Range. Again, isolated thunderstorms over the eastern interior, 40-mile country, and toward the central Tanana Valley, and a couple of strikes with this trough back out here to the west. Otherwise, sunshine. Upper Yukon Valley back to the west here with isolated showers up over the Brooks Range, but winds are quite light, and this front again bringing some gusty winds. Cold Bay, as I mentioned, gusts 35 miles an hour. Still a little breezy here over the eastern Aleutians, 20 to 30 mile an hour winds in areas there. But again, nothing serious. And precipitation, pretty light. A couple of low centers back to the west there. Twins at 997 millibars, but really those will just continue to slide east and northeast as this whole area of moisture pushes up with the southwest jet, west-southwest jet over the next couple of days. On the forecast for tonight, high pressure holds up here around the Seward Peninsula. So there'll be light winds from the northern Bering Sea up across the Chukchi. So that could lead to some low clouds, fog, IFR type flying weather through these areas, possibly into the western Seward Peninsula. Otherwise pretty good there to the east. Isolated showers, some clouds, central eastern Brooks Range, and that's about it. Some areas of the North Slope will remain mostly clear and should stay nice out over the Arctic coast, and pretty nice here over the eastern interior as well. This trough, very weak low here, 1,006 millibars. and that trough extending west-southwest will continue to keep a few showers around with partly to mostly cloudy skies here from the Copper River Basin all the way down to the southern Kuskokwim Valley on out to the Kuskokwim Delta area. And then area light rain will advance northeastward. Actually may increase a little bit from what it was this afternoon here, so it probably will get a little more widespread as far as rainfall, and staying breezy there with the front still to the west for the Alaska Peninsula. So it could see gusts to possibly 40 miles an hour. Pressure gradient here in the orientations, perfect for Cold Bay to see 40 mile an hour wind gusts. And it'll be a little breezy and damp over the Pribilofs, and also unsettled with those two low centers drifting eastward over the Aleutians. But winds will be light, and rainfall will also be light, and decreasing precipitation over the southern panhandle as that trough slips on off to the southeast. But showers will linger tonight, even all the way up to the north, but places like Haines, Skagway, and of course Yakutat probably won't see any precipitation. Stays dry North Gulf Coast. Again, scattered showers here along the trough over southern Alaska, dry up over the eastern and central interior, and also back to the northwest. And then for tomorrow, high pressure holding here over the Chukchi Sea. So again, areas of low clouds and fog, pretty likely in areas there all the way down through the strait to St. Lawrence Island. Partly and mostly sunny north central interior from the Tanana Valley or White Mountains up to the Brooks Range. Then you'll pick up that shower chance again in the afternoon there in areas of the Brooks Range. Pretty hit and miss, and probably more miss than hit. And the north slope could have some clearing. I don't really have it drawn in there, but I could have put a few sand traps up there for some sunshine. Patchy fog possible eastern Arctic coast. And panhandle, still a trough in the area, but it'll be a little more sunshine than what you saw today and less in the way of precipitation or showers. So not too bad. Dry for Kodiak Island, although increasing chances of rain down towards Sitkinak and Akiak in the afternoon. Bristol Bay to the southern Kuskokwim Valley looking pretty good, or southern Kuskokwim Delta as well, but wet for the Pribilofs. Isolated thunderstorms with this trough, which on Tuesday lifts farther to the north, and I'll take the thunderstorm threat, as light as it is, with it a little farther to the north, but still along the Alaska Range here, possibly into the northern Kuskokwim Valley, and then back up toward, say, Indian Mountain, with the chance of showers out to Ambler or possibly Selawik, but it should be partly mostly sunny. Up for the north slope, especially west, isolated showers possible eastern Brooks Range. Winds are light for the Arctic coast. A little more easterly, you could pick up a little bit there, maybe 15 knots or so for the east side, possibly 20 in some areas. Otherwise light back to the west. Area of rain with this low center still holding out here over the Pribilof Island area and eastern southeast Bering Sea into the southwest coast with this front here. So clouds will be on the increase across the southern Kenai Peninsula and Cook Inlet, with a chance of rain actually reaching the southern peninsula, Seldovia, maybe Homer, more likely Iliamno, that easterly flow. Kind of a wet, cloudy day for Kodiak Island, and still mostly cloudy with scattered showers there along the southeast coast. And for the lows tonight down there, upper 40s to near 50, and upper 40s, mid to upper 40s for the Copper River Basin, upper 40s near 50 south central Alaska, upper 40s interior valleys of the southwest, cooling to the mid-40s out toward the coast, and near 50 for the eastern Tanana Valley areas and upper Yukon, upper 40s back to the west, and upper 30s for the Arctic coast, and near 40 on the north slope, mid-40s for the Alaska Peninsula, lower 40s for the Aleutians. Highs tomorrow, up possibly into the upper 70s here, especially around the greater Fairbanks area, with lower 70s back to Tanana, to Bettles, 74 forecast high for Eagle, and into the 60s to Sitna Valley down into northern Cook Inlet, with temperatures holding in the upper 50s across the southeast coast. And Kodiak Island, lower 50s, even a little cooler there for the Alaska Peninsula. Pribilof's upper 40s, same thing for Adak and Atka. And the Arctic coast, 40s to near 50, except for Kaktovik, stuck at 39. And for the lows, Tuesday morning, lower to mid 30s there for the Arctic coast, milder over the north slope. Near 50 even into the Brooks Range, lower 50s here in the central interior, 40s to near 50 over the southwest, and the same thing here for southern Alaska, 40s Copper River Basin, and the southeast coast, upper 40s to lower 50s for your low temperatures, which the following day won't rise all that much, upper 50s to near 60 for the highs, back into the 70s here, central eastern interior, and definitely into the mid-60s for the Susitna Valley and back to the southwest toward Bethel, while the Arctic coast hangs in the 40s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to our next graphic here, flying weather. A lot of IFR out over the Bering Sea, down to just about all the Aleutians, southern coast of the Alaska Peninsula, on over to Sitkinak Island and AKwx and those areas, but VFR roughly from Chiniak Bay across the Fognak Island, the Barrens, Kenai Peninsula, some marginal VFR along the western Alaska range, and from about the Matanuska Valley and the Talkeetna eastward across Copper River Basin. IFR over the Wrangels, VFR in the interior, out toward the Arctic coast, the usual marginal VFR with some areas of IFR, marginal over the Panhandle. Tomorrow afternoon, no change, marginal VFR here along the southeast coast. IFR there around Yakutat and marginal over the Copper River Basin, Prince William Sound. Westward here to, well, definitely Turnagain Arm and the Matanuska Valley, Susitna Valley, breaking out the VFR, marginal still along the Alaska Range, VFR in the interior, all the way out to the southwest coast and even off the coast here. Some VFR tomorrow afternoon, but along the southern Alaska Peninsula, quite a bit of IFR, as well as out over the central Bering Sea, eastward to the Pribilofs and southwestward to Adak, Atka, and Kiska Island, and along the central and western Arctic coast. For Tuesday morning, same pattern up there, except increasing along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, but the north slope southward into the interior and even all the way out to the southwest coast, pretty good for the VFR. Bering Strait, same thing. No change for the Bering Sea here, just kind of big area IFR oscillating around here from one graphic to the next, with marginal VFR up to Togiak Bay, portions of Bristol Bay. Big increase in the IFR here, Kodiak Island, North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, Southern Kenai Peninsula, marginal VFR up to the central and western Alaska Range, and taking a pretty good jog to the north here across the eastern Copper River Basin, but probably won't cross the Alaska Range. And then IFR looks like on the increase there for the Panhandle, and in the afternoon that dissipates a little bit, hanging tough toward the border and around Yakutat there, marginal VFR inland Copper River Basin, VFR Cook Inlet, Susitna Valley, and IFR Kodiak Island, VFR in the interior all the way up to the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast with marginal VFR on the west side, and pretty much VFR through the Bering Strait, Seward Peninsula areas. And then looks like a little bit less of IFR out here over the Bering Sea, kind of breaking up a little bit there, but widespread marginal VFR. The only VFR I can see is over here in Bristol Bay. So moving on to passes, Anatuvik and Adigan, both occasionally marginal tomorrow at times. Same thing for Lake Clark and Merrill, occasional marginal VFR, which means VFR at other times. And that forecast holds for windy as well, or for rainy. Windy, VFR, possible marginal VFR on the southern entrance. Isabel, optimistically, I'll go with a VFR forecast, but Mentasta looks like it'll be occasionally marginal and partly marginal for Tanita as well. Portage starting out marginal with a gradual improving trend through the day, hopefully to VFR conditions. Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR to start with, trending toward VFR in and throughout the afternoon. Freezing levels about 6,000 feet here along the southeast coast, Gulf of Alaska, 8,000 feet over the eastern interior areas, otherwise 6,000 feet, cools to about 4,000 over the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island, and 4,000 feet here over the Bering Sea to about 8,000 over the central Aleutians to the Alaska Peninsula. And icing threats tomorrow could be some here around the Pribilof Islands, Alaska Peninsula into Kodiak Island, light to extremely isolated rime icing here above about 6,000 feet, and then areas of mixed icing, more convective nature, the precipitation here over the southern interior and eastern or Copper River Basin, and just a threat with that lingering moisture there over the southeast coast. Jet stream well to the south here, really very weak flow up here across Alaska, and moving on to 9,000 feet though, we got 15 to 20 knot winds out of the southeast here across the Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, up to 25 knots there. Along the southwest coast, light winds, central eastern interior with really slack wind flow, a couple of weak lows in the weak high center. North 25 over the western Aleutians, westerlies 5 to 15 in the Panhandle, same thing. 3,000 feet, Very light wind flow, light and variable over interior Alaska on out to the Arctic coast, west-northwest 15 to maybe 20 knots for the panhandle, and 15 to 25 knot winds out over the Bering Sea. Turbulence, Alaska Peninsula, Pribilofs, and western Aleutians.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, joined again by Eric Stevens of GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And Eric, thanks so much for joining us again tonight.
Happy to be here, Dave.
Thanks, Eric. And we've been talking about the complex gathering of information from satellites, looking down on the surface of the planet, and some of those orbits around the planet work for Alaska, and some of them don't. There's a lot of challenges with those. How can we get better imagery for the poles and specifically for Alaska?
Right. Well, today we're going to talk about a very interesting kind of satellite orbit that has potential to be real helpful for the high latitudes.
Okay.
Especially us here in Alaska. Canadians, Russians, Norwegians will all be interested in this. The satellites are not in orbit yet. Now the future is uncertain, but it's possible, and if this happens, it will be wonderful for Alaska. Okay. It's called the highly elliptical orbit.
Oh, that sounds
it's interesting. Yeah. And I think first, to help our discussion, we should get back to some of Kepler's laws and how do satellites work.
Sure.
Kepler's first law, an orbit of a planet around a sun or a weather satellite around the Earth is not necessarily a circle, it's an ellipse.
Okay.
And the highly elliptical orbit takes advantage of this aspect. We're going to put the Earth in one of the ellipse and then stretch one of the foci of the ellipse and then stretch that ellipse out real far to make it highly elliptical.
The foci is that bend part of the end of the ellipse. If you're going to stretch out a rubber band, that would be the center, kind of the stretchy part.
Yes.
Ends. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then Kepler's second law says that the closer something is to the thing that it's orbiting, the faster it goes.
Okay.
We see this in the solar system, that Mercury flies around the sun real fast. Jupiter, much slower. Jupiter's further away, it's slower. Mercury's closer in, it's faster. This happens with weather satellites too. Even satellites like the International Space Station, it's pretty close to the Earth. It goes around the Earth in only 90 minutes. Okay. That thing is moving.
Fast.
It's only 250 miles away. So how can we take advantage of these two aspects of Kepler's laws of motion to get better weather surveillance of Alaska? And this highly elliptical orbit is going to be the approach. So we have with us today our friendly planet Earth and our simulated satellite, the lid off of this salt shaker
like
here.
Sputnik there. Yeah.
There it is. It's shiny, it's metal, it's space worthy. And what we want to be able to do is, could you have a satellite hover over the top of the world, up over Alaska? You can't really do that. Geostationary satellites have to be over the equator.
Okay.
So how could we almost solve this? And this is the tricky part. Maybe should we tilt the Earth over?
Focus on the pole. That's what we're trying to accomplish here, right?
So here we have the northern side of the planet, and we're going to trace out the orbit of a satellite with this salt shaker lid here. Now imagine a highly elliptical orbit. So let's put the Earth in one of the foci of the ellipse, and we'll have an imaginary foci out here. So the satellite will not go in a circle around the Earth, but will be in this long strung out ellipse. So the satellite will go...
Kind of like a racetrack.
Yes, there you go, like a racetrack. So it's an oval elliptical shape like that. And notice now that when the satellite's over here, we've got a nice view of the northern hemisphere around. There's Alaska, Russia, Canada, Greenland, all there. So that's the ellipse aspect of an orbit, Kepler's first law. The second law saying that when you're further away as a satellite, you go slower. And this we can take real advantage of. Because the way this orbit works, when the satellite goes over Antarctica here, it's going to be close to the Earth. It's going to be moving, whoosh, goes on by. And then as it comes out here, it will slow down. This increases what is known as the dwell time. The satellite will just hang here looking for hours at Alaska and the high Arctic. And then eventually it will come around and it will accelerate and whiz around the South Pole and then come back and hang here for a while because it's further away from the planet. It goes slower. It has to. That's the laws of motion. And such like that, repeating.
Wow.
Now the real important way to make this work is you have to have two satellites. So that while one is whipping around the pole, you've got the other one out here, and they work as a team. You could then get a series of images of Alaska that can be almost from a quasi, a constant frame of reference.
Right.
And you can loop them together to make movies. You can take a picture every 10 minutes, say, of Alaska, and then loop it, playing it at several frames a second. You could see the clouds whiz on by. You know, the Weather Channel, weather broadcasters in the lower 48 especially can show these movie loops from the geostationary satellites. In Alaska, we've never really been able to do that very well, especially in the higher, most northern parts of the state, because those geostationary satellites are over the equator. It's not a good view. And this highly elliptical orbit whipping around the South Pole and then dwelling up here would be a way for us to get that constant frame of reference and do really good weather surveillance over the Arctic, seeing where those storms are, where they're going. Nothing quite like a movie loop of the weather in time to really illustrate what's important, what's going on.
And compared to what we have right now, we just have small windows or snapshots of what's going on with the polar orbiters. We don't have that long range view that's looking top down to give us that complete motion picture that helps us understand so much of the atmosphere at this
There's
point.
so many different kinds of satellites. Each has their advantage. Each is important, and the highly elliptical orbit satellite will also fit into that scheme. It's a nifty idea to solve an Alaskan challenge.
That's fantastic. Well, that sounds really exciting. And again, kind of a satellite dream of the future to come. Okay, very good. Thanks for joining us today, Eric. We really appreciate the information. And if you'd like to learn more about what Eric does at Dehne, at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, we invite you to visit the web address that you see on your screen there. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. So the northerly winds have stopped. We're going kind of a southerly flow of the wind field now. So this area ice won't advance any farther to the south there, and may start to creep back to the north over the next several days. Otherwise, that's about it as far as any future changes go. And you can see over here, Mackenzie River Bay is starting to open up there, still east of the border. That due to obviously the outflow from Mackenzie River. And for the coastal water forecast here for the southeast coast, south part of the southeast coast, here west to northwest, up to 20 knots, westerlies 10 to 15, pretty light up to the north. Seas 4 to 5 feet north to 6 feet south, light northwest winds for Clarence Strait, 15 knots, and west-southwest or southwest at 15 for Stevens Passage. Lynn Canal, though, smoke craft advisory, southerly winds coming up to 25 knots, seas building to 5 feet. That holds through Tuesday there with the small craft advisory for those southerly winds for Lynn Canal. Otherwise, Stevens Passage south now at 15, Clarence Strait west 15, and westerlies here along the central and south coast up to 20 knots with seas 4 to 6 feet for Tuesday, and up to the north there, west at 15 with 3-foot seas. Prince William Sound, light southwest breeze at 10, 2-foot seas, 15-knot winds from the southwest here for the North Gulf Coast with 3 to 4-foot seas, 20-knot southwesterlies for the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay there with seas running 5 feet. South 20 for the area south of the Forelands there in Cook Inlet with 5-foot seas. Northern Cook Inlet, southwest 15, and seas a little lower at 3 feet. Then they'll swing around to the northeast on Tuesday, variable to northeast, 10 knots. Pretty light though, 2-foot seas all the way down until you get to Kamishak Bay. Then some good small craft advisories, a pretty stiff easterly wind at 30 knots. Small craft advisories also for the Barren Islands there, east 25, seas 7 feet. Western North Gulf Coast, 15 knots out of the east, but light winds here from Middleton Island on into Prince William Sound, east-northeast at 10 with 2 to 3-foot seas. Kodiak Island, east side, south 20, Shelikof Strait, southwest 20. And then from Sitkinak to Cape Sarachev, southeast, 25 knots, seas 8 to 9 feet. North side here, there's east wind at 25 with 5-foot seas and winds coming up to 20 knots there for Bristol Bay and seas at about 3 feet. Those will be even stronger on Tuesday, forecasting 30 knots right out of the east there for Bristol Bay. So good small craft advisories there. South to southeast 15 to 20 for the Alaska Peninsula and Castle Cape to Sitkinak, as well as up the east side of Kodiak Island and Fognak Island, southeast 20. Shelikof Strait has a small craft advisory with east 25. Fox Islands, basically southerly if you average it all out at 15 to 20 knots with seas 10 feet in the Pacific side, 6 feet in the Bering Sea side. Adak Atka west-northwest 15 to 20, and northerlies 15 to 20 for the western Aleutians. On Tuesday there, from about Kiska eastward, north 15, small craft advisories around Chitka, across Adak to Atka, turning westerly 25 knots, and then mostly west-southwest at around 20 knots here for the Fox Islands, with seas running 4 to 9 feet. And for the area south of Nunivak Island, east 25, that pattern right across the Perbolofs with seas building to 8 feet there. East 20 for St. Matthew Island, northeast 15, northern Nunivak Island, fall back to about 10 knots, St. Lawrence Island and Norton Sound. Then on Tuesday, still light for Norton Sound, east 10 for northeast 10 for St. Lawrence Island, east 20 north of Nunivak Island, small craft advisories here, south of Nunivak Island, and northeast 20 for the Perbolofs and St. Matthew Island zones. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, just easterlies maybe 5 to 10 knots, south 10 for the central coast, southwest 15. Hopefully, it should be lighter winds for areas like Cape Lisburne, what you saw today and yesterday, down to 15. Even lighter winds here for the Chukchi Sea. And the outlook for Tuesday, swinging around to the north here for the Chukchi Sea. Light winds, Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, east 15 for the central and west side. And then those winds coming up to 20 knots, as I mentioned earlier, on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And for tonight, basically high pressure over the Seward Peninsula and Bering Strait. So low clouds in the strait, Chukchi Sea, and northern Bering in areas. Mostly clear, though, into the western interior. North slope looking good. Isolated showers of Brooks Range. And decreasing showers here over the southeast coast, especially in the south. And rain, light rain and breezy conditions spread into the, or the rain spreads into the Alaska Peninsula.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.